Mortenax Blade, the cool character who is the newest form of Blade, can finally be fully understood in terms of his kit details. Compared to his previous version, Mortenax Blade is very different. He has a fire type with the Nihility path, and instead of being a Hypercarry DPS, he takes on the role of a debuffer within the team. Even though the change is quite drastic, his scaling and some of his mechanics are still similar to the previous Blade, such as HP scaling and of course consuming HP. Overall, just like some unique characters in this game, Mortenax Blade has two types of ultimate. The first ultimate has a very cool effect that applies debuffs which reduce enemy defense, increase damage taken by all enemies, and increase his own critical value. Meanwhile, the second ultimate acts as a finishing attack that deals massive damage to all enemies. So, will Mortenax Blade become a character that plays an important role in the future team compositions? Without waiting any longer, I'm hsrguide and let's jump straight into the full kit of Mortenax Blade version 4.3. Let's do this. Alright, real quick before we continue, for those of you playing honkaistarrail or Zenless Zone 0, I've got a quick recommendation for you. If you ever find yourself needing to top up, whether you're going for a new character, saving up for a banner, or you just need a few extra pulls, you might want to check out Buff. What I like about Buff is that the prices are usually more affordable compared to other platforms. And the whole process is really simple. No complicated steps, no unnecessary waiting, everything's pretty fast and straightforward. And the best thing is, you can use the voucher code hsrguide to get an extra discount on your purchase. If you're interested, there's a link in the description. You can go check it out and see if it works for you. First of all, we're going to talk about his basic attacks. Mortenax Blade has two types of basic attack. For the first version, a broken blade still slays. It deals damage equal to 50% of Mortenax Blade's maximum HP to a single enemy and applies a taunt debuff for one turn. Overall, this basic attack is similar to other characters, dealing fairly standard damage, but there's something interesting here. Mortenax Blade's basic attack applies a taunt debuff to the enemy, which is quite unique because most characters' basic attacks do not have any debuff at all. However, there's something you need to keep in mind. This taunt only lasts for one turn and only affects a single enemy. So this effect is very effective in a single target situations, like boss fights, but in modes like Pure Fiction, this taunt won't have much impact. After that, for the second basic attack, a Tempered Blade severs souls. This can only be activated after using Mortenax Blade's ultimate, Mortenax Excorpor. The effect is more or less the same as the previous version, but the damage is almost doubled. Other than that, everything else remains mostly the same. Next, we move on to his ultimate, because this part contains very important information that you need to understand. Unlike most characters, Mortenax Blade has two different ultimates. For the first version, Mortenax Excorpor, when we use this ultimate, it applies a debuff called Balefire Bind to all enemies. Enemies affected by this debuff will have their defense reduced by 30% and take 50% increased damage for 2 turns. Honestly, the defense reduction and increased damage taken from this ultimate affect all types of damage, whether it's critical damage, damage over time, super break, or even elation damage. This makes Mortenax Blade similar to Cypher, a flexible debuffer. And if you're wondering whether this affects Acheron, yes, this ultimate also increases the damage of Acheron's ultimate in Nihility teams. And it doesn't stop there. Through this ultimate, Mortenax Blade will consume 30% of his HP to create a special zone. While this zone is active, he enters a state called Infinite Fury. What's cool is that in this state, Mortenax Blade gains multiple effects, such as increasing his critical rate by 20%, increasing his critical damage by 60%, unlocking his skill, and transforming his ultimate into another version called 10x per Ignum, which deals fire damage equal to 300% of his maximum HP to all enemies. Is that all? Of course not. Mortenax Blade will not be defeated when taking fatal damage, but instead will remove the zone, exit Infinite Fury, and restore 50% of his HP. This effect is similar to Mighty, who can avoid being knocked out in battle. This state is also somewhat similar to Firefly, because it has its own countdown with a fixed speed of 70. Once the countdown takes its turn, Mortenax Blade will exit Infinite Fury and the duration of his ultimate will immediately end. This means we need to build this character similarly to Firefly with high speed, because the higher his speed, the more turns he can take while in Infinite Fury. And lastly, there's one important note you need to know. Mortenax Blade cannot use his skill when he is not in the Infinite Fury state. This means we can only use basic attacks when his ultimate is not active. Meanwhile, his second ultimate does not have any additional effect, but it deals extremely high damage, reaching up to 300% of his maximum HP. So this ultimate serves as his main damage finishing move to deal massive damage to enemies. Now we move on to his skill, called a Rain of Blades Seals Fate. Mortenax Blade consumes 15% of his HP to deal fire damage equal to 72% of his maximum HP to all enemies, and then deals 4 additional fire hits equal to 24% of his maximum HP randomly to enemies. In my opinion, this skill is really cool. At first glance, it looks like a pure AoE attack, but with the additional 4 hits at the end, it can also be directed toward single targets or bosses. So in other words, this is an AoE skill that also has a bounce type attack mechanic. Oh yeah, I also need to mention that this skill does not consume any skill points at all. This clearly shows that Mortenax Blade is very SP positive, because we don't need to worry about skill points when using his skill. Alright, now we move on to his talent, called All Karma Comes Due. When the zone from his ultimate is active, every attack from teammates will apply Balefire Bind to the enemy target and grant 1 charge to Mortenax Blade. Now here's the interesting part. When the charge reaches 9 points, Mortenax Blade will consume all charges to restore 25 energy and automatically trigger his skill once, which will not consume HP and is counted as a follow-up attack. In my opinion, this talent is extremely good because it creates opportunities for us to frequently trigger his very strong skill. From this effect, it's clear that we should pair Mortenax Blade with characters who can attack frequently, especially those with follow-up attack mechanics. Because the faster we gain charges, the faster we can recharge his ultimate and trigger additional skills for extra damage. That's why characters like Ashvale, Aventurine, Weishao, or Tribi are very suitable to maximize Mortenax Blade's kit. Now let's talk about his technique, Blade's Reach Spares None. This technique attacks all enemies within range and immediately enters battle. When entering battle, it applies taunt to all enemies for 1 turn and reduces damage taken by 90% for 2 turns. This technique is both unique and extremely strong for the start of a battle. All enemy attacks will be directed toward Mortenax Blade, but with 90% damage reduction, meaning he will take very minimal damage. This allows us to potentially run no-sustain teams in certain endgame content. However, you need to make sure that the enemy mainly deals single target damage, because if they use AoE or blast attacks, your teammates will still take damage. Now we move on to his traces. For the first trace, Bone, Hardened ad nauseam. This effect allows Mortenax Blade to accumulate up to 80 excess energy, which is equivalent to 1 full ultimate. This means we can use this excess energy to maintain near 100% ultimate uptime. After using ultimate, the excess energy will be consumed and converted into usable energy. What makes it even better is that at the start of battle or when his zone disappears, if his energy is below 50%, it will automatically be restored to 50%. This ensures that Mortenax Blade will always have at least 40 energy, allowing him to continuously stay in Infinite Fury state and keep applying Balefire Bind to enemies. And for the second trace, Soul, Tempered at Mortem. When the zone is active, Mortenax Blade has an increased chance of being targeted by enemies. After taking damage, he will apply Balefire Bind to the attacker and gain 1 charge. This effect makes enemies focus their attacks on him while also helping him stack charges and apply debuffs consistently. It's quite similar to his previous version, where Blade would be targeted more often after activating his skill. Now for the last trace, and in my opinion, one of the most interesting parts of his kit, Heart Rewind ad infinitum. When the zone is active, all damage dealt by teammates is increased by 50%. This effect is completely universal and has no conditions, which makes it extremely strong, guys. On top of that, if there's another Nihility character in the team besides Mortenax Blade, teammates' ultimate damage will increase by 50%. If not, then follow-up attack damage will increase by 50% instead. This dual effect is what makes Mortenax Blade very flexible, as he can fit into both ultimate-based teams like Acheron and follow-up attack teams like hsrbuild. Now we move on to the islands. For Island 1, Ere My Death I Stood Unmade. When the zone is active, it reduces enemy all-tap resistance by 20%. After triggering the extra skill from his talent, the countdown of Infinite Fury state will be delayed by 15%. This effect is very strong because it not only increases overall damage output for both Mortenax Blade and his teammates, but also extends the duration of Infinite Fury state significantly. With high speed, this effect can allow nearly permanent uptime of his ultimate state. Next, for Island 2, Ash Was My Heart Yet the Flame state. This effect increases the damage of the extra skill from his talent by 50%, which is quite significant. On top of that, whenever teammates use their ultimate to deal damage, those attacks will be considered as follow-up attacks. And whenever teammates perform follow-up attacks, Mortenax Blade will gain 1 additional charge. This means characters that frequently use ultimate or follow-up attacks will generate charges much faster for him. So, characters like Tribi, Acheron, Weld, and hsrbuild work extremely well with this island. For Island 4, Odium I've Spin, Thence Came the Blade. This effect provides an additional team buff that increases teammates' ultimate damage by 50%. Even though the effect is simple, it's extremely powerful because it has no conditions and directly boosts team damage. When combined with the original buff from his kit, teammates can receive up to 100% damage increase, which is very strong. Lastly, for Island 6, If Immortality Could Die, I Swore Them Slain. When the zone is active, every time Mortenax Blade consumes HP or takes damage, he will gain 1 charge. And this can be triggered every enemy turn. Additionally, the damage multiplier of his second ultimate, 10x per ignum, increases by 150% from its original value. This makes his ultimate reach up to 450% scaling from maximum HP, which is extremely high. This island also allows him to gain charges much faster, and even synergize with HP consuming effect like Hyacinth's Light Cone. However, this island is very expensive, so I recommend stopping at E1 for non-follow-up tech teams or E2 for follow-up tech teams, because even at E0, he's already a very strong character. Finally, we move on to his signature Light Cone, reforged in Hellfire. This Light Cone provides a 24% increase to maximum HP, which is very useful for his HP scaling. At the start of each wave, the user will also restore 20 energy. After using a skill to attack enemies, it applies a state called Purgatory for 2 turns. This state increases the critical damage received by enemies by 30% and also increases the user's critical damage by another 30%. This means enemies can receive up to 60% more critical damage, which significantly boosts both Mortenax Blade's personal damage and the team's overall damage. On top of that, currently there are no Nihility Light Cones that provide additional HP like this, which makes this Light Cone even more valuable compared to other options. Okay guys, maybe that's all for now. What do you think about Mortenax Blade? Please leave any comments down below and don't forget to check out my other videos because they are no less cool. Thanks for watching, stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video.